Good evening, Rowan. It's the 5th of November 2015 and it's just after midnight. I hope you're enjoying your second trip over the pond this year, because you were there in May or June, weren't you, at a conference about Thomas Merton? And then you went to Spain in September, and then you went to Singapore, and then you're back over there again, aren't you? So you're living quite a jet-setting lifestyle, aren't you? Have you not heard of Skype? What about your carbon footprint? What about how all this fossil fuel, carbon emissions, contribute to the death and starvation and deprivation of the most vulnerable people on the planet? This is what you always tell us, isn't it, when you're trying to tell us that we need to do away with democracy and bring in a dictatorial government, which you're on video on YouTube as saying. You didn't mention a dictatorial government, but you did say we were going to have to think hard about what this meant about democracy. And then you said, oh, that was just a side issue. But actually, it was the main issue. Anyway, don't utter another peep about global warming, otherwise I'm going to start publishing your travel schedule. And that's not to mention that you own at least 2 houses as well, which must be full of consumer items and furniture, and then you're living in a 3rd place as well. So all of these buildings, you know, have been built with materials extracted from the ground and manufactured, and filled with manufactured furniture and other items. So you're using all these resources that the most vulnerable people on Earth are being deprived of. You need to be thinking about that when you're lecturing us all about global warming, don't you? Anyway, this evening I thought you might have enjoyed the readings we've been having over the last few weeks, so I thought we'd have some more readings this evening, but this time out of your biography by Rupert Short, and particularly from the chapter entitled The Newport Years. And in reading these out, I have in mind the documentary Fishhead, which is about psychopaths in public life and how they emulate people who are competent in organisations and infiltrate, and then they start picking off and getting rid of everyone that they see as competition. So with that in mind, I'm going to get on with these readings now without further ado. And all of these readings are from chapter 5 of your biography, The Newport Years, which is the time when I knew you. Some of the bishop's hangers-on were unstable, severely so in one case. The woman in question obtained details of his diary engagements and for some time stalked him at every service he attended. Sometimes she shouted insults at him during worship, once calling him the spawn of the devil. I'd just like to point out that that wasn't me, so you've obviously got more than one fan. Anyway, this is the biography that I'm quoting from, Rupert Short, Rowan's Rule, London, Hodder and Stoughton, 2014, and that's page 190 from chapter 5. Next quotation. Plenty of people came forward to offer themselves for priestly training, one diocesan observer told me. This is Rupert Short, the author of the book, who is being told. Some had made a mess of their earlier careers in secular employment or as clergy in other denominations. Several had been turned down for ministry in the Church of England. About half a dozen, an unprecedented number, left or were turned away from St Michael's, Cardiff's Anglican Theological College, because they caused trouble there. Others made it into parishes with mixed success. That Rowan supported them was a mark of his warmth, his undying instinct to give people a fresh start, and to see the best in them thereafter. But ordination is not a rite, and there are financial implications in commending someone for ministerial training. Leniency could shade into holy naivety in Rowan's case. That's from page 195. They didn't know you were a Trojan horse, did they? and that your whole mission was to cause as much havoc and destruction as you possibly could, and that's why you got rid of competent people and supported people you knew were going to be a disaster. Those who think him too tender-hearted to have been a good judge of character are reluctant to revise their verdict. Several cite an especially difficult episode concerning an alcoholic priest who ran up six-figure debts during the 1990s and was eventually forced into early retirement. The man was alleged to be spending much of the day in the pub. He was declared bankrupt but still allowed pastoral care of a group of parishioners. His congregation suffered as a consequence. Page 196. And I'd just like to point out that your astrophysical clergy friend who was sexually harassing me was also an alcoholic. As well as being a space cadet. And more than 30 years older than me. So, a broadly comparable example is given by a retired bishop who oversaw an important Church of England see during the 1990s. At one point, Rowan sent me a priest who had caused difficulties, assuring me that he could be placed in my diocese. Yet this man caused chaos in his new job as well, in his desire always to show charity towards individuals, except when he's spreading scandal behind their back for decades. Rowan sometimes lost sight of the good of the broader church, just by accident. More widely reported was the saga of a cleric who had to be sacked on the day of his planned induction after 11th hour revelations about his past. But letting people down in the 11th hour is your style, isn't it, Rowan? Let the man leave his previous job, let the parishioners think they're getting a new priest, and then let everyone down at the last minute. That's your style, and that's what psychopaths do. That's from page 196 as well. If you were down on your luck, then Rowan was your friend, except when he was causing the bad luck. Rowan would often see a difficult cleric alone, despite being advised that he would be in a stronger position if supported by one of his archdeacons or by the diocesan chancellor. Peter Woodman recollects. I couldn't work out if this was because he didn't trust us, or because he was sure he knew best. Well, let me tell you, Mr. Woodman, it was because he wanted to see if he could use the person, and also because he's a psychopath, he would have been intent on making the person's problems worse as well, because he gets off on that. Page 197. In some cases his choices were inspired, but in others they were disastrous. He chose one man whom I, this is Tudor Griffiths, had judged unsuitable for ministry. He lacked the necessary gifts and had no depth of spirituality, but he could say the right things. Page 198. That sounds like you, Rowan. You lack the necessary gifts and have no depth of spirituality, but you can say the right things when it suits you. Rowan did not want an assistant bishop, feeling that such a figure would come between him and his people. Yeah, and the only thing you want coming between you and your people is contraceptive devices. You didn't want anyone interfering with your agenda, and you're a prima donna. That's on page 199, with my obvious commentary. Overall, Tudor Griffith's only cavil concerned Rowan Williams' reliability as a judge of others. Generally, Rowan appointed to senior positions men, I use the term advisedly, who were fairly set in traditional modes of thinking and church life. This meant that those of us who were with him in his vision were left vulnerable on his departure. Someone said he didn't like rival stars. That's pages 200 to 201. Whoever said you didn't like rival stars got it in a nutshell. Anyway, I don't want to go on for over 15 minutes, even though there's a lot more I could say, but I'll say that for another video. I'll save it for the next one. So have a nice day, and remember, be alert. Hasta mañana.